And so what you will see over the course of the coming weeks and months is that our friends in Northwest Territories and Nunavut are going to identify a port that they want us to focus on. So are our friends in Yukon, so are our friends in British Columbia, and I think we're already working on identifying those along the Hudson Bay. Even our friend in Ontario, I suggested to him maybe we could build a little spur line up to James Bay, and then we'd be able to bypass some of the resistance that we keep getting on from Eastern Canada. And I'm quite happy to work on national corridors, you bet I am. But I'm not going to allow Quebec to have a veto on our decisions, our pipelines, and our ability to our.
Well, if you heard what the Premier said just earlier, I don't think people could say what they want, but she said it right there. She's going to fight for Alberta. She's Alberta first, and well, actually, she's working quite hard to work with other provinces in the West, looking for those corridors. Those corridors are going to be really helpful. Yeah. Alberta is a land of milk and honey, and we just need to make sure we get our product out.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News on location at the Stampede grounds. As you know, the Stampede is about Western culture, but it is just about as much about the politicking that we see at Stampede breakfast and at events like this. I am at a reception being hosted by Minister Devin Dreeshen. He's the Minister for Transportation and Economic Corridors. He's one of the folks of the UCP trying to gain back a little bit more of that Calgary vote when the next election rolls around.
One of the things that I observed when I was at the long time that I've been in politics, and it's part of the reason I love think tanks so much. The very first person who planted the seed about economic corridors with me was James Cumming, who at the time was president of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. And then as I did a little bit more research, I discovered that we had been talking in this province about the need for transportation economic corridors since the 1930s. William Aberhart was the one who first started talking about this. It got me thinking, if the federal government hasn't built these now in 100 years, they are not going to build it without our leadership. And that is why we're going to take the leadership. We are going to take the lead on working with our
I'm now joined by David Parker of Take Back Alberta. The question I'm asking folks today, obviously the Stampede's taking place. It's an event where Western values, Western industries are on display. Many people within Alberta feel that, at least on a federal level, even if the Conservatives they aren't necessarily valued. I know over the last few years there's been questions even about how well our provincial government is reflecting these values. Do you see sort of a shift, or do you think that Western values with Poilievre, with Smith, are starting to be represented by these parties again?
I think it's going to take time, right? We've suffered a lot of years of the Laurentian elite telling us who we should be and how we should live. And let's be honest, Alberta was kind of founded as a colony, right, of Eastern Canada. It was, the railroad went through, and then they're like, okay, we're going to get resources from there. We're going to bring them to the East. The East is going to do the manufacturing. So it's almost a growing up, in a sense. I think Western values are the values of the entrepreneur, of the explorer, of the person who wants to go and make a life for themselves. A lot of the people who moved here from all over the world came here not because it's the easiest place to live. Let's be honest, we have long winters, right? But they came here because they saw opportunity to build a better life.
So I'm now joined by Minister Dreeshen. This is your reception. So I guess first off, thanks for having us out. Since Keystone XL was canceled, since some of the pushback from the East, one of the critical issues for Alberta energy sectors, for Alberta industries, has been establishing these economic corridors and has been establishing access to tidewater for our industries. Have you managed to gain any progress? Is there any good news? Is there anything that Albertans can look forward to with your newly attained position?
So we actually signed an agreement with Saskatchewan, Manitoba just last year to promote an economic corridor, which is essentially a line on the map that indicates that you have that approval, that there's no going to be government risks that are at play, and so you can build a nation-building project, whether that's a pipeline or a railroad, a roadway, utility lines. So whether it's bringing Manitoba electricity to the west or oil and gas from the west to the east, that's on the table with an economic corridor. So we're actually talking with the Northern Territories as well to do something similar. So as you mentioned, Alberta, we're landlocked, so we need to get our products to market. And we have the third largest oil reserves in the world and the fifth largest natural gas reserves in the world. And the world wants all of these things. We got to make sure that we can get it to market.
So I am now joined by Rick Wilson, Minister of Indigenous Relations. What I wanted to ask you about is I've attended a number of events. I know a couple of the chiefs and elders in these communities. When I speak with them, they feel that they have a pretty strong relationship with yourself, with the Smith government, especially on some of these issues like addictions recovery and those networking. Some of the media would tend to characterize it as a hostile relationship. I haven't seen that. Can you speak a little bit about the relationship?
Absolutely not. I can almost say I'm friends with pretty much every chief in the province. It's just the way I work. I grew up in an Indigenous community, and it's for me it's just a life passion to work with Indigenous people and make them what we're calling partners in prosperity. And they know that I'm not out there just trying to play it along, and this is real stuff, and we're making real differences. You've probably heard of the AIOC, the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation. We've done some amazing things there. We're on track to do $1 billion in backstopping, and so I'm going to Treasury Board fairly soon to ask for another $1 billion. That's how unpopular it's become. And some big projects, everything from building power plants with good clean Alberta natural gas with full carbon capture. We've got training programs there to help young kids become everything from electricians to CEOs of companies, or if they want to work on heavy equipment, we got training programs for all of that. So it's been really successful. I'm really proud of the work we've done there.
I am now joined by MLA Grant Hunter of Tabor Warner. I suppose the question I'm asking for you, the Stampede is taking place right there. For many Albertans, whether it be federally or provincially for rural Albertans, there's sometimes a sentiment that perhaps they aren't being represented. What's your sort of confidence that this government may be bringing back a bit of that Ralph Klein cowboy attitude and standing up for Western values? Do you get the sense that sentiment's on the rise within the party?
Well, if you heard what the Premier said just earlier, I don't think people could say what they want, but she said it right there. She's going to fight for Alberta. She's Alberta first. And actually, she's working quite hard to work with other provinces in the West, looking for those corridors. Those corridors are going to be really helpful. Alberta is a land of milk and honey, and we just need to make sure we get our product out.
Now joined by MLA Scott Sinclair. I kind of wanted to gather your perspective. Obviously, the Stampede's taking place. One of the big themes with the Stampede is sort of entrepreneurship. In addition to being an MLA, you're also a business owner. How important and how much work is the UCP doing to advocate for small business owners and for even folks in your community who are trying to get ahead, fight back against some of these increasing costs?
We're trying to do everything we can. I'm so proud to be a part of this government. Our leadership with Danielle Smith as the Premier has been amazing. And I'm a small businessman myself, so I understand how important the little things are, and having a government that supports you, keeping our corporate taxes low, making it easier on the everyday working man. And we're proud to be a party that looks out for regular Albertans, and we continue to do so. I believe there is lots of opportunities right now, and I think we are going to be a government that works hard to try and establish and foster relationships to make sure that Indigenous communities are both consulted with and made shareholders in some partnerships. And we've already done that so far. Just recently, Minister Dan Williams and the Premier and Minister Ellis, or Deputy Premier Ellis, made an amazing announcement with the treatment centers. So this is a big part of public safety for me. We believe in sobriety and recovery, and I think our government is doing an amazing job of showing leadership and trying to take real action instead of just words, because that's what we need to do to try and help these people get out of these addictions.
I'm now joined by Minister of Advanced Education, Rajan Sawhney. Given that we're at the Stampede grounds, there's a lot of Alberta industries here that rely on advanced education, whether it be agriculture, whether it be trades. What sort of moves are the UCP making and is your ministry making to ensure that people are drawn to this province and are accessing quality education in Alberta?
Well, I think Albertans and Canadians have seen that we've had this incredible net migration into the province, and that really speaks to what Alberta has to offer. And now, in terms of what's happening in the world geopolitically, Alberta is uniquely poised to be the producer and supplier of agri-food products. So certainly as the Minister of Advanced Education, I'm looking into the future to see what the economy of the future looks like, and making sure that our students and future generations are trained to be able to meet those labor challenges and shortages.
Now joined by a man who needs no introduction, Ravinder Minhas. Just as a sort of prominent business owner within this community, obviously intimately involved in the Stampede, so much of what the Stampede is that maverick attitude, the sense of entrepreneurship. With this government, with the development that's taking place, do you get the sense that Alberta is as open for business as ever?
I think absolutely, and I think the building that we're standing in shows what can happen when people work together. The BMO expansion is huge, and I think it will draw. It's amazing what the city comes together for 10 days, but with this expansion in a convention center and a real big trade floor, it is the attitude of Albertans that we can get done when we work hard.
So with those investments, that new BMO building, potentially the new arena deal, efforts to make city streets safe again, are we kind of returning to the former glory days of Calgary?
I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Stampede and the city, but from my perspective, I think it's amazing. I mean, in the alcohol business, no place like Alberta.
So we're at the Calgary Stampede, talking a little bit about Western values. Now, safe communities is sort of a critical issue, one that we've sort of grown up being used to, being able to go wherever. That's shifted a bit. Can you talk a little bit about the efforts of the UCP and your ministry to tackle that issue?
Well, quite frankly, Adam, we're just going to continue down the road of public safety, right? People have a right to feel safe in their communities. People have a right to feel safe using public transit. People have a right not to consume secondhand crystal meth smoke, as an example. So, look, I mean, this is a very complex problem. There's no one single solution. I, along with my good friend, Minister Amery, are going to be working very closely to make some significant changes with the federal government. As you know, Bill C-48 is on the table right now. We are, as I've expressed very publicly, very little disappointed that Parliament had taken a bit of a break in regards to that. That's kind of left us in a precarious position. But as I have said, as the Premier has said, we are going to do whatever it takes to keep Albertans safe. And so if that means putting more police officers on the street, if that means ensuring that all the right resources are in place, that's what we're going to continue to do.
I am now joined by Alberta's relatively new Minister of Justice, Mickey Amery. I wanted to sort of get your perspective. Obviously, you've got a background as a lawyer, well suited to the position. Tyler Shandro, the former minister, he was doing a lot of good work on firearms rights. Now, Justin Trudeau, the federal Liberals, obviously sort of pushing back on that crux and key component of Western culture. What plans do you have, and do you continue to stand up with a strong advocacy for firearms rights?
Absolutely. I have long advocated for firearms rights. I'm currently a firearm license holder. I'm a firearm owner as well. I certainly respect the ability for law-abiding citizens to continue to utilize and purchase and acquire legal firearms. One thing that I want to point out is in the 12 years of being a lawyer, I have had a tremendous amount of exposure when it comes to criminal matters and whatnot. The legal, legitimate firearm owners do not commit the crimes. In the numbers, I should say that the federal government appears to indicate to us, gun crimes are committed by criminals. Those people are not acquiring guns through their licensing program, and they're not acquiring them legally. And that's a fact. We need to target those issues. We need to make sure that we focus on curbing illegal guns, illegal crimes, and targeting criminals, not law-abiding gun owners. We are not easy on crime. We want the reputation of being very hard on criminals, and that's exactly what I want everybody to understand.
Well, it was great to have the opportunity to attend this event, have access to so many politicians, pick their brains and ask them some important questions about how they will continue to advocate for Alberta and Alberta industries on the global stage. We're going to be covering a number of Stampede events that will grant us similar access to politicians throughout Stampede, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And as always, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos. Unlike the mainstream media that reaches into your pockets and takes money to fund their projects through your taxes, whether you like it or not, here at Rebel News, we like to give you the choice. We ask you to freely consider chipping in to support the work we do. So if you want to help us fill our gas tanks to get out to reports just like this, consider chipping in a few bucks at rebelfieldreports.com.